Akan lanjut ya ke selanjutnya, moving forward itu ke next speaker yaitu Mark Leadercramer dari from Stripe. Ya. He will share his perspective on the rise of e-commerce and evolution of payment in APAC on 5 emerging payments trends. Yeah, please welcome Mr. Mark Leadercramer.
Thanks everyone. I hope you enjoyed the session so far. Thank you for having me along. I've come over from Singapore and really excited to be here with you guys today talking about the future of payments in Southeast Asia. I was just going to ask, just to introduce myself, I look after revenue growth for Stripe in Southeast Asia, and Indonesia is one of the most exciting markets for us in the region. And there are some incredible things going on here, so delighted to be able to speak to you. Can I just ask the audience, who has heard of Stripe before? No one? My goodness, okay. So everyone has been coming up to you saying, what do you do? What does Stripe do? And obviously, from the title of this presentation, you'll be aware it's something to do with payments. But the way I describe what Stripe does is we are a plumbing company. Now, you might think, why is a plumbing company here talking to us today when this is all about e-commerce and the future of payment, the future of e-commerce? Well, how often do you think about your plumbing? Not much, right? It's something that just works. It happens. You want to run a bath, the water comes. You want to wash some dishes, you turn on the tap, it happens. Stripe believes that that's what payments should be for a business. You should be able to accept payments easily without having to worry about the plumbing. You don't need a whole team looking under the floorboards to try and understand what's happening. So we saw an opportunity, which is businesses spend too much time worrying about payments, or when they're building or starting out, they don't have the headcount in order to dedicate that towards payments. And so that's what we do. We take the stress out of that. So if you want to start adding recurring payments, or you want to start going after customers in different countries, we can help you do that really quickly by taking the hard work out of it and letting you focus on your business. So there we go. We are a plumbing company, if anyone asks you. That's my definition. So a few statistics for you guys. In terms of the growth, we know that it has been an unprecedented couple of years in terms of growth, and we expect that to continue. So we've seen global retail sales grow. We've seen 20% of those sales coming from online channels, which tells you two things. One, that has grown enormously, but also how much potential there still is when it comes to online, how much more there is as we start to move into more of an omni-channel environment, as the first speaker was talking about. Secondly, within this region, 61% of consumers have increased their online shopping in the past year, with over 1/3 of them doubling it. And what we know is that this is a one-way door. So once people go through it, once they embrace online and e-commerce, it's very unusual for them to go back to old habits. We see kind of hybrid behavior happening, but once people have established trust with a platform, with a website, with interacting online, it's a one-way door, and that's what we're really excited about. And it's not just us, but 82% of global executives agree, and they believe that that purchasing behavior will continue even post-pandemic. But where does this get complicated? Well, the reality is the payments landscape is very, very complex, right? We used to start out in the early days in the 1970s, where we had a few cards, we had a few payment channels, a few ways of purchasing. But as we look towards 2023, we see that explode. And what does that mean for you guys? Well, it means that your customers want to pay using different methods. They might want to use cryptocurrency. They might want to use buy now, pay later. They might want to use lots of different payment methods. And how do you as a business set yourself up in a way that can accept those payment payments. And so that complex landscape is a really, really critical problem facing anyone that wants to start accepting money, particularly in the region of Southeast Asia. In fact, I talk about it a little bit like we're in the VHS era when it comes to payments. Does anyone here ever use a VHS player? Okay, I just don't want to show back. Okay, at the back, thank you. Now, the VHS was very exciting when it came out. Everyone was excited about it. I think we're still in that when it comes to payments, right? But it's very complicated. There's still danger that you'll record over your wedding day with like last night's football match. There's lots of buttons to press, it's complicated. And this is my local coffee shop. This doesn't look right. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different forms of payment acceptance. It's still complicated, it's still in this situation. But we see that starting to get simplified and cleaned up. And we also believe that we have a role in that. So I want to take you through 5 trends, particularly that are relevant to Asia when it comes to payments. The first one, I'm going to ask about digital wallets. I think we paid for some coffee today using one. Who in the audience here has used the digital wallet in the last few weeks? Anyone? Okay, we've got one over there, thank you. So, yeah. Well, we predict, or predictions are that 80% of consumer payments will be handled by non-banks, so through mobile, through connected devices. So that is something that's going to continue. And once again, we're seeing that as a preferred payment method here in Asia. We're seeing 40% of transactions going through wallets in terms of preference. So people love paying with their phone. It's convenient, it's simple, it's straightforward, and it works. And so we're seeing that as a real chunk. And that compares quite differently actually versus the US or Europe, where you're at 20%. So we're seeing wallets being a really important payment method. And why is that important? Well, we ran an experiment. So by we added Alipay and WeChat Pay to some of our merchants that we work with, and what we saw was a 2x increase in payments coming from China just by accepting that payment method. So that has a direct impact on your bottom line. It brings in new customers that may be comfortable paying with certain payment methods, but are nervous when they get to the end of the checkout and they don't see a payment method that they recognise or want to interact with. The second one, and I think it's particularly relevant to this audience, is around cross-border payments, establishing yourself in other markets. So 70% of businesses that start today, they sell outside their home market. So the usual sort of pattern would be, you start your business, you establish yourself, you get moving, you start to build up runway, you go for about 5, 10 years, and then you start to think about expansion. But the way the market is today, particularly within this region, going into other markets has become increasingly important to grow your bottom line. So I'm going to tell you a brief story about some poor choices I made during the pandemic that do relate a little bit to cross-border. So the first is I decided to take up gardening. The second was that I built my own online razor store. And the third was that I bought a puppy called Nacho for the family. Unfortunately, the garden didn't make it. The garden died. Very sad. I put a lot into it. Also, sadly, my razor store didn't make it post-pandemic. Didn't make it through. And also, unfortunately, no, Nacho, he's okay. He is alive. He's well. There's no problems with Nacho. He made it through the pandemic. But I'm going to focus a little bit on the razors and what happened there. So what I found that was incredible was that within a day, I had set up my razor business and I was accepting payments from someone overseas. I started in the morning, and by the evening I had my store up and running, and I had sold a razor to someone in the US. Now to me that was unthinkable. That's unbelievable. You can set up a business that starts to transact across borders with customers all around the world in one day. But the way the world is moving, and with some incredible platforms available, that is now possible. So your audience is not just local, and I encourage everyone to think about how they can operate across the region and in different markets, and then how they need to present in those markets. So yeah, my razor store, sadly, it didn't make it, but it was exciting to get that first customer. It was a guy in Texas, but as you know, I think everyone's growing beards during the pandemic, so I don't think I was kind of on the trend there. We know that also, particularly, looking at Singapore, 88% of those businesses are accepting a building for markets outside themselves. They're selling outside of their home market, and that's a real, obviously, trend here in the region. But what does that mean? If you're trying to sell to a customer in another market, that can be painful. So in order to set up your payment methods in those markets, you're going to get a high rate of declines. People trying to pay and it not working. I know I've spoken to lots of people here today that have talked about that as they've tried to go international, authorization rate goes down. Also, just the time it takes. Do you really want to dedicate resources to actually integrating a new payment method in Singapore or one in the US, for example? And also, when you present at the checkout and it isn't in local currency, there's high abandonment. So people, when they see it's not in their local currency, often abandon their cart. So not presenting in local currency is also a big barrier. Another one I talk about is just familiarity. Obviously, people in the US, Europe, other markets, all around the world have a feel and a look when it comes to the checkout experience that might be different to this market. So when they see something that's global, that's recognizable, it also increases that trust that we talked about a little bit earlier when it comes to the checkout process. And here's just a quick example. This was a merchant of ours that got 2x growth just by going outside of their home market in Colombia, selling products and using Stripe to help facilitate that. Trend number 3 is around platforms. So one of the things that we hear often is that banks don't really understand the needs, particularly when it comes to SMEs. They don't understand what is required, and they don't necessarily move quickly enough. So 59% of people that we spoke to, of small businesses, they said they're not able to get access to the financing they need. And even higher margin feel that they don't, the current bank doesn't really understand their issues properly when they try and they don't necessarily have a voice with the banks. And interestingly, 22% of SMEs are thinking of changing. So that's an interesting opportunity if you're a platform, because ultimately platforms are starting to embed finance in their offering, not just offering a shop front, not just offering order fulfillment, but also then offering the merchant capital or loans or treasury or finance or the analytics to understand your sales better. And that all now goes into one platform versus lots of different individual players or where you use traditionally a bank. So you can see how that plays out if you're a platform. You start accepting payments, you run a really good marketing campaign. You now need to fund that, so you take out a loan from the platform in order to fulfill the orders. You then want to manage your orders, or you want to add a subscription to what you do. And you can do all of that within the platform, and that's all facilitated in a nice, simple way instead of you having to build that out individually. So the fourth one, and there will be some repetition here from the first speaker, but I think it shows how important omni-channel is that we're seeing a real balance between online and offline when it comes to the retail experience. So 85% of people that we spoke to, there was some sort of digital influence in terms of what got them into the store in the first place when they made that purchase. But what was really interesting, we talked about click and collect, is the impact that then has in store. So what we found, if you take Amazon, for example, when people purchased online and then went in store to collect the item, half of shoppers then made an additional purchase in store, because obviously the retail environment really encouraged additional purchases. So the way that online and offline work together is really, really important. We see that continue, particularly for certain verticals within retail, where that store experience is still vital. And we're seeing, as you know, with Amazon Go, we're seeing more offline and online consolidation. So ultimately, how that comes together is also really important. You want to make sure that when you're taking payment in your store, you're also able to consolidate that really quickly and easily with your online payment. Or you want to recognize who is your online customer with the person that walks in your store, so that you can understand the customer journey and understand how to work with that customer through how they pay, by recognizing the card. And that's where this kind of omni-channel experience is so important. I was told to keep it relatively short, so I know that no one wants to sit listening to digital payments for more than 30 minutes, so I'm flying through this. But I wanted to talk about a really good client of ours called Castle, who also used this, where they created a seamless setup whereby they're taking online payments for their online store, but also consolidating that with their offline, and they're instantly able to recognize, use their customer data, and understand their customer data from those two behaviors. The fifth and final trend to talk about, and the one I get asked the most about, is crypto, and what is happening with crypto, how that's becoming an important mechanism when it comes to global value exchange and storage. And I like to think of this a little bit like the journey of the internet. If we think about money, money is essentially data now. It's rare that we're using cash, or increasingly we're not using cash as much. And traditionally, if you go back in the way that data and information was used, that was privately held in the way that the information was held. The internet came along, the dot-com boom suddenly embraced the fact that information could become public, the internet, and we've seen incredible growth and amazing opportunities that have come off the back of that. Now, many people, I think that the reason there's excitement around crypto is they feel the same thing is happening within finance, which is you've taken a process which was traditionally privately owned and had to go through many middlemen. And I think the reason we're seeing excitement around crypto is because it cuts that out and becomes almost public. So there's a lot of excitement, a lot of people talking to us about it. And that's obviously an area that we're looking at, which is enabling people to top up their balance move their fiat money into crypto, but also doing payouts. So we work with Twitter to pay out influencers in crypto because they're increasingly asking that. And the view of Stripe is very much, if people are asking for it, we will do it. So we don't take necessarily a position on crypto, but if that is a payment method that people want, then that's something that we need to bring to the market. And so we're seeing really interesting use cases and opportunities when it comes to that checkout experience. So, a quick reminder of the 5 emerging trends when it comes to payments landscape. Number 1, digital wallets. If you are not accepting digital wallets currently in your store, I recommend doing it. We saw an amazing uptick when it comes to actual acceptance and people's ease, particularly when it comes to mobile and mobile transactions. 2 is cross-border. If you are thinking of going into other markets, how do you do that quickly and effectively? How do you disrupt that? Instead of taking 2 years to go into a new market, you do it in 6 months or less. 3, platforms. What can they do when it comes to offering financial services and supporting small businesses in a way that the banks don't? And omni-channel, how do we link up offline payments and online payments to create a really seamless experience when it comes to our customers? And finally, crypto. What can that mean for merchants when it comes to accepting crypto across the region? How is that going to cut out middlemen and potentially reduce fees as a process? So those are the 5 for us to leave you with. Any questions from the audience? I think I'm doing a Q&A here, so any questions from the audience? I normally get a crypto-related question. Normally someone asks me for a tip, which I can't give out, unfortunately. Anything? I'm going to come over.
Thank you. With the volatility of cryptocurrency, how can you handle that? For the example, like when the value of Bitcoin crashed. Yes.
So I think the question is around volatility, right? But how do you handle volatility when it comes to cryptocurrencies? And possibly not something I could necessarily answer. But one thing that I have seen people do is, as an example, there's a retailer that I heard would accept the payment and choose the proportion that they would then want to convert back to money, and then what they would like to hold as a cryptocurrency. So, as an example, if you run a luxury good company, you accept payment in Bitcoin, and then in checkout, deciding, right, I will hold 80% in cash, but I'll maintain 20% of Bitcoin. So some people use those methods to mitigate the risk of fluctuations. But yeah, it still has hold that volatility. I think what we're seeing is from, particularly we've seen in ride sharing, we've seen lots of drivers requesting that payment in Bitcoin, seeing it as payments, a different way to store money. So yeah, we can't control the volatility, but I think there are different ways to mitigate that. Brilliant. Well, myself and Reggie over there, everyone waves at Reggie, are going to be around for the next little while, just outside. So do come over, do have a chat with us. We're happy to talk to you guys, or obviously speak to our great partner ICUBE as well if you need to get hold of us and you've got some interesting ideas that you want to explore with us. We're really open to collaborating and working. And yeah, thank you very much for your time, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you again, Mr. Leadercramer. We can have valuable insight from your experience and perspective. So I would like to invite Mr. Chuck and Tasha and Mr. Mark to join us on stage to receive a plaque of appreciation. And also I would like to invite Pak Dana on behalf of SIRCLO to present the plaque of appreciation to our speakers. Okay, please take a moment for the photo session. Okay, good. Thank you. Oke, kita sudah masuk ke sesi kedua, jadi abis ini kita akan break dulu. Thank you untuk semua partisipan yang sudah ikut. Dan abis ini kita masih ada sesi ketiga dengan Bapak Aritonang ya, dari BNI dan Pak Mulyadi. Dan juga jangan lupa saya mengingatkan di depan booth Zenit itu ada games lempar dart dengan hadiah 5 juta rupiah totalnya. Jadi silakan bila ada waktu sempat main-main ke boothnya Zenit. Ya, thank you.